Hi, I'm Reb Myron. I'm a minister through Pathways of Light, and I've been a Course in Miracles student for 40 years. I'm going through the lessons this year as I've done for several years before this, and I'm asking Jesus for clarity. And then I write from that clarity whatever comes into my mind, and that's what I'm sharing with you today. So let's get started. Our theme for these lessons has been, what is salvation? And Jesus asked that we read that before each lesson, so I recommend that. And tomorrow we start with a different theme. Okay, so we're looking at lesson 240. Fear is not justified in any form. Fear is a deception. It attests that you have seen yourself as you could never be, and therefore look upon a world which is impossible. Not one thing in this world is true. It does not matter what the form in which it may appear. It witnesses but to your own illusions of yourself. Let us not be deceived today. We are the sons of God. There is no fear in us, for we are each a part of love itself. How foolish are our fears! Would you allow your son to suffer? Give us faith today to recognize your son and set him free. Let us forgive him in your name, that we may understand his holiness and feel the love for him, which is your own as well. Well, it can sure seem like fear is justified. When I think of myself as a person separate from others and from God, living in a body in a world of time and space, today's lesson makes no sense. I seem to be justified in my fears. We watch every day or every year during hurricane season to see if we will be hit. Will there be damage to my home if we do get one? Where will I evacuate to, and how long will I have to stay? Will it hit the other side of the state where my son lives? How is it that fear is not justified in this form? It is because we are not people living in bodies in a world of time and space. We are spirit. We are the sons of God. We are replaying an ancient memory, and to make it feel very real, we place it before our eyes. You know, the eyes in the body that doesn't exist. Within the story, there are things to do in preparation. Because this is a memory, it will unfold and it will feel like I'm doing these things. But I know that even if this happens, I'm really the observer, watching my thoughts and feelings for the lesson that it holds for me. Last year, when I was facing hurricane season, I had to look at my fears. When I heard that Hurricane Ida might be heading for us, I immediately felt overwhelmed. My house was not even completely repaired from the 2 hurricanes that hit us last year. I started to cry and almost stopped myself because I know the truth, but I also saw the Holy Spirit's instructions not to deny the feelings. So I cried. Then I expressed my feelings to someone else, and all that energy was released, and I very quickly returned to peace. I'm very careful to share these feelings only with those people who understand and will not make the feelings feel more real to me. Instead, they'll just hear me and then remind me of the truth. What is there to fear after all? There is no house and there is no body. So what could possibly be lost? Fear is deception. Not one thing in this world is true. The ego loves this kind of distraction because it's easy to get so lost in the story that we are observing that one forgets it's not true. Now all our attention is on the world, and that is where the ego wants it. Instead, I turned my attention to my mind. There I could see what yet needs to be healed. No matter what happens in the world over the next couple of days, no matter what losses might occur in the story of Myron and hurricanes, I have done what I came to do. I looked through the Holy Spirit at my thoughts, and he is healing my mind. How foolish are our fears. We cannot be harmed. We are divine, eternal beings. We are greatly loved and forever safe. We are the sons of God. There is no fear in us, for we are each a part of love itself. I sometimes feel fear, but I know I'm not my feelings. Feelings come and feelings go because they are not eternal, and therefore they are not real. The ego mind argues that some fear is justified. It argues that it makes sense to be afraid of certain things, like fire, or in my case, heights. But that is not true. It pays to be cautious, perhaps, but fear is not needed or justified. Ultimately, there is nothing happening in this world that is eternal, and therefore nothing that is real. All of the fear that occurs in the mind is about the image of the separate self, and that is not me. So I have nothing to fear. Should I be afraid of what people think of me? The me we're talking about is the image of a separated self, and why should I care what people think about that image? It is here for a while, and then it is gone. I am that which is aware of it, and I am that which witnesses it, but is unaffected by it. I cannot be harmed by anyone's opinion. Even the loss of the body image is not a loss to me. It has a short run anyway, and I am eternal. Maybe I will choose another, or maybe I will not want or need this world again. Who knows? But how could an eternal being be affected by losing a temporary illusion of a body? When this happens, it is because I have forgotten who I am. Sometimes there's a feeling of fear that doesn't seem to be connected to anything in particular. This is just ego awareness of unconscious guilt. It can be disregarded as equally unreal. There is no justification for fear. So when it appears in my mind, I treat it as a temporary aberration it is. I look at it with the Holy Spirit. I ask if there's anything for me to know about this feeling. I then let it be, and soon it passes on through, as do all temporary illusions. If I get hooked by a fear thought, I might have to talk myself through the moment. I might have to call on spiritual help for the strength and fortitude to remember the truth. But these days are rare now, and I see that fear no longer rules me. I forgive my belief in it and release it, usually sooner rather than later, but always eventually. So here's Regina's tips, just a short part of them. 2 days ago, we noticed that our decisions are based on who we think we are. Fear is a decision. Whenever we're afraid, it's because we have decided to believe fearful thoughts in the mind. We have decided those thoughts are true, and this decision is based on who we think we are. Look at some fearful situations. You may look at current fears or fearful situations that you remember. What is the identification that is the basis of the fear? Regina goes on to give some examples like feeling rejectable. She asked us to look at that idea and to ask ourselves, if nothing in the world is true, could it be rejectable? Is this idea with me always, or is it just a passing idea or feeling? I am not a passing idea, so rejection cannot be me. If someone were unclear about the idea of how there could be nothing to fear and why that is, it might be helpful to read her tip in full. Here is the link. So here's an example of how I overcame fear by relinquishing a special relationship. This is something that happened a long time ago, about 16 years ago. I set an intention to allow fear thoughts to come up for healing. And as I was ready to look at them with the Holy Spirit, and certainly that has been happening, it has been lovely as I go through this process. It is not always easy, but I feel very supported. Yesterday, I had a more difficult fear belief surface triggered by one of my children. Special relationships tend to feel complicated to me because they have so many elements, fear elements. And of course, because I mistakenly mistakenly think of them as vital to my survival. Is there any special relationship so rich in forgiveness opportunities as the relationships we have with our children? This lesson comes at a very opportune time, since in September, I'll be conducting a workshop on enlightened parenting. Any lessons I learn now will find a place in that workshop. I firmly believe in recycling my lessons. I was shocked. One of my children said something to me that seemed so selfish and self-centered that I could hardly believe I'd heard it. It also seemed like a direct attack on me. I felt like someone had just knocked me down and I was having trouble getting my breath. I felt the fear go through me like a shock of adrenaline. I fumbled for words because while in ego distress, there was no opening for Holy Spirit to give me his, which adds to the upset. There followed guilt as I began to consider what he had said. I felt the parent's guilt about having made bad mistakes as I raised this child. I spoiled him, and now I had to see the results. Later, I felt anger and resentment, the "how could he" syndrome. But as the lesson says, there is no justification for fear, which applies to its different forms, such as anger and resentment. This occurred at the perfect time, really. I'd been working on fear, and I'd set the intention of releasing fear in all its forms as I was made aware of them. It seemed as if I was as ready as I was likely to be. So as all these emotions washed over me, I was still aware of the need to heal. I immediately asked the Holy Spirit to help me with this. I asked him to look with me and help me see a different way of looking at it. It took a while, and I was like a diver having to rise up from a great depth in stages so I wouldn't get the bends. At first, all I could do with it was ask for help. So much deeply buried fear arose that I felt stunned by it and could not sort it out. Slowly, I was able to see what the anger and resentment in him were masking. I saw that he was in unacknowledged fear. He was trying to project out of himself. As I began to realize what was happening with him, I was able to step out of myself and see him with compassion. I began to see us both differently. I was no longer looking at him as my enemy, but as my brother with whom I shared the purpose of awakening. He was no longer another person competing with me for the dab of happiness available in this world. I was no longer even singling him out as my son who owed me something. Instead, I saw him as another aspect of myself working in perfect harmony with me to return us home. Then I looked at my own feelings. I saw that he was mirroring for me my fears of failing as a mother and of being unloved. I recognized the nature of the special relationship we had bargained for. My anger stemmed from the thought that he had broken that agreement. I was supposed to spoil him, adore him, and give him all my attention. He, in return, was supposed to be forever my special child who loved and admired and respected me. As I looked at it closely, I could see where this anger came from. I had broken the unspoken agreement first when I began to gently push him from the nest. It must have been quite a shock to see a change in his most significant special relationship to date. I asked the Holy Spirit to help me loosen the binds that tie in a way that would be gentle and loving to both of us, and in a way that would help each of us understand the nature of the special relationship. No special relationship, regardless of how loving it seems, will ever be without elements of fear and loss because it is based on separation. Not even our special relationships with our children that seem so necessary and so loving. They will end in chaos and guilt and fear if we do not accept healing. When we do, the Holy Spirit transforms them into holy relationships. I still feel a twinge of fear at the thought of giving up the special relationship. The ego mind sees this as a loss of a magnitude that is hard to seriously consider, It would have me find a way to restore the relationship's balance and return it to the way it has always been. And of course, if I give up this special relationship, what about the others? Will their loss quickly follow? The ego is frightened of life without its primary bargains and wonders how it will exist without them. Holy Spirit, I am willing to believe that I am wrong to side with the ego. That is, to see special relationships as necessary and good. I'm willing to see relationships differently. I'm willing to walk through this fear and get to the other side. And I am willing to believe that what you offer me in the place of the special relationship will be better than what I cling to now. The ego keeps saying I had a good thing and I should go back to what I know works. But I don't believe those lies anymore. It does not work, and I will not live in denial about it anymore. This is a message I received as I meditated on this situation. Holy Spirit said, "Dear one, letting go of your special relationships is not painful. It is only the decision to let go that seems to bring you pain, and that is true only until you decide it is not. Do not be concerned about how to be in a holy relationship with your precious son. The holy relationship reflects the only true relationship, and what is true flows naturally as you remove the impediments to its flow. Do not think of the loss of your special relationships as a sacrifice. God never asked for sacrifice, and I can assure you that you lose nothing in its relinquishment. I further assure you that the holy relationship is joyful and loving without the elements of fear and guilt that are part of every special relationship. Within the holy relationship, you are free. We thank you for being willing to walk through your fear and trust that we would be there with you and that the walk will bring you peace. As more layers of the fear surface, continue to look at them with me. In this way, you will see that fear is a lie. It is a cloud. It is even less substantial than a cloud, and it cannot impede the Son of God, nor affect his Son in any way. Do not decide that it can, for it is this decision that binds you to the world. So thank you so much for joining me in this lesson. If you found it helpful, then please like it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And I will be back tomorrow with the next lesson and the next special thing